I caught my husband and my sister in bed, so I took the money and watched them fall apart. Please stay with me as I tell my story. And please, do not forget to support our channel by subscribing to our channel, liking our videos, and sharing your loved ones. Your support means the world to us. Now to our story. Poke. Imagine walking into your own bedroom and finding your husband tangled up in bed with your own sister. That's exactly what happened to me. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Emily. I'm 32 years old, and I live in Texas. For 7 years, I believed I had built a solid life with my husband, Ryan, who is 34. We met in college, fell in love quickly, and decided to build everything together. I thought we had the same dreams, the same values, and the same idea of what family meant. To me, Ryan was not only my partner, but also the person I trusted with every piece of my heart. Then there's my younger sister, Jessica. She's 28, and unlike me, she never settled down. She bounced from job to job, apartment to apartment, and relationship to relationship. Growing up, I was always the one who kept everything in line. My parents used to tell me I was the dependable daughter, while Jessica was the free spirit who never followed the rules. Even as adults, that pattern continued. Whenever Jessica found herself in trouble, she came to me. And every time I opened my door, I lent her money, gave her a place to stay, and even defended her when family members got frustrated with her choices. Our parents are good people. They tried to raise us both with love and guidance, but they leaned on me when things with Jessica got too chaotic. I didn't mind it most of the time, though it was heavy on my shoulders. I thought helping her was part of being a big sister. Ryan knew all this. He saw me step up for Jessica more times than I could count. At first, he encouraged it, even praised me for my patience. He said it showed my big heart. But slowly, without me realizing, that open door I kept for Jessica became the doorway she would eventually use to betray me. Looking back now, the signs were there. But at the time, I didn't want to believe that people I loved most could ever cross me like that. I was proud of the life Ryan and I had built. I was proud of being the stable one in a family where chaos always seemed to follow Jessica. I thought I had my role in life figured out. The responsible sister, the devoted wife, the one who kept everything together. What I didn't know was that the two people I had poured so much of myself into were hiding a secret that would rip my world apart. I'm here to tell you how it all unfolded, how I survived it, and how I found my strength again. It started small, the kind of things you almost don't notice when you trust someone. Ryan became distant. He used to call me during the day just to check in, or send me a text to say he missed me, but those moments slowly faded. When I asked about it, he would shrug and say work was piling up, or that he was stressed about deadline. I believed him because he had always been dedicated to his job. What I didn't notice right away was how his late nights kept becoming more frequent. Some nights he wouldn't come home until long after I had gone to bed, and when I asked why, he brushed it off with a tired smile. Another thing that started to bother me was how he kept his phone close. Before, he would leave it on the table or even forget it in the living room. But now it was always in his pocket or flipped face down. If a notification came through, he was quick to grab it before I could even glance at the screen. I tried to tell myself I was overthinking, that maybe he was just more private than before, but deep down, I felt a shift I couldn't explain. Around the same time, Jessica began showing up at the house more often. She claimed she was lonely, that being single made her feel left out. She would come over for dinner unannounced, or just drop by saying she needed company. I didn't question it too much because I was used to her leaning on me. I thought I was being a good sister by keeping her close, giving her a safe place when she said she felt empty. But slowly, I began noticing how comfortable she had become in my home. She would linger in the kitchen with Ryan, laughing at something I wasn't part of. Sometimes, I'd walk in and find them joking around, sharing little smiles as if they had a secret language. At family dinners, the two of them would start cracking inside jokes that left me sitting there in silence, pretending to laugh even though I didn't understand. It stung, but I brushed it off, telling myself I was being sensitive. One evening, we were at my parents' house, and Ryan and Jessica kept exchanging glances across the table. They laughed at things no one else found funny. My mom even asked what the joke was, but they both shook their heads like it was nothing. I felt like I was on the outside of something I should have been part of, but instead of speaking up, I swallowed the unease. Every gut feeling told me something wasn't right, but I kept convincing myself that I was imagining things. I had always trusted them both. I told myself Ryan loved me, and Jessica was just being her usual self. That trust, that blind faith, became the very reason I ignored what was right in front of me. That evening was supposed to be ordinary. I had a late meeting scheduled, but at the last moment, it was canceled. I remember feeling almost relieved, thinking I would surprise Ryan by coming home early. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, but as soon as I stepped inside, I heard faint laughter drifting from upstairs. It was strange, light-hearted laughter, not the kind I expected after a long day. I set my bag down as quietly as I could and stood still for a moment, trying to place the voices. One of them was Ryan's, low and familiar, but the other was softer, sharper in a way I knew all too well. It was Jessica. My chest tightened as I stood frozen in the entryway. 100 thoughts rushed through my head, but none made sense. Why would she be here without me knowing? Why would they be laughing like that when I wasn't around? I climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. The closer I got, the clearer their voices became. The laughter, the whispers, the sound of a bed creaking. My stomach dropped, and for a second, I hoped desperately that I was misunderstanding. I pushed the door open just slightly, enough to see inside. What I saw shattered me. Jessica was lying in my bed, wearing my robe as if it belonged to her. Ryan was beside her, his arm draped across her body, whispering words into her ear. Words I recognized instantly, because they were the same ones he used to whisper to me when we were alone. I felt like the air had been sucked from the room. I couldn't move. My whole body froze as my eyes locked on the scene in front of me. My husband and my sister, tangled together in the most intimate way possible, in the very space where I thought I was safe. The betrayal hit me like a punch I couldn't recover from. My heart pounded, but my feet felt glued to the floor. Neither of them noticed me. They were too caught up in each other, too wrapped in what they thought was secret. I stood there long enough to feel something inside me break apart, but I didn't make a sound. Somehow, I managed to pull the door shut softly, almost careful not to alert them. I backed away, step by step, until I was at the bottom of the stairs again. When I finally reached the front door, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the handle. I wanted to scream, to burst in and tear everything apart, but something in me refused to give them that satisfaction. Instead, I slipped outside quietly, letting the rage and heartbreak rise inside me like a storm I wasn't ready to unleash. That night, the image of them together burned itself into my mind, and I knew nothing in my life would ever be the same again. I sat in the car for a long time that night before finally walking back inside. By then, they were downstairs, acting as if nothing unusual had happened. My face felt hot, but I forced myself to stay calm. At dinner, I smiled, asked questions, and pretended I hadn't seen a thing. It was the hardest performance of my life. Every word out of their mouths felt like poison, yet I nodded and played along. Ryan talked about work as if he hadn't been upstairs with my sister just hours earlier. Jessica laughed and joked like she hadn't just crossed the worst line imaginable. I studied them both closely. Neither of them showed even a flicker of guilt. They looked straight at me and lied without hesitation. I wanted to scream, but instead I watched and collected myself. I knew if I exploded too soon, I'd lose control of what came next. The next morning, I decided it was time to confront Ryan. I found him in the kitchen making coffee, acting normal. My heart was pounding, but I asked him directly if he was sleeping with Jessica. His eyes went wide, and then he laughed nervously, insisting I was imagining things. He said I was tired, stressed, reading too much into nothing. I stayed quiet, refusing to let him twist it. Finally, when he realized I wasn't backing down, his voice dropped, and he admitted it had happened, just once. The way he said it, like it was a small mistake, cut deeper than the betrayal itself. He spoke as if cheating with my sister was something minor, something we could brush off. My hands shook, but I held my ground. I knew it wasn't just once. I had seen too much. Later that day, I cornered Jessica. She didn't bother pretending. When I asked her how she could do this to me, she smirked like it was some kind of game. Her words still echo in my mind. She said, "Maybe he deserves someone fun for once." The cruelty in her voice was worse than the act itself. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't ashamed. She wanted to hurt me. In that moment, something inside me hardened. I realized neither of them cared about the pain they caused. There was no guilt, no remorse. They were selfish, careless, and unashamed. Any hope I had that one of them would admit wrong, or even show regret, vanished right there. I walked away from Jessica without saying another word. I felt cold, almost detached. The betrayal had cut me open, but their lack of remorse carved something deeper. They thought they had won. They thought I would break quietly and accept it. They were wrong. The day after confronting them, I sat alone in the living room staring at the wall. My mind kept circling back to everything I had lost, everything they had taken from me. Then it hit me, our savings. For years, Ryan and I had worked to build that account. It held $85,000, money we planned to use as a down payment for a house. Part of it was also my inheritance from my grandmother, money she left me to build a secure future. Ryan was the one who pushed to keep it all in a joint account. He used to tell me it showed trust, that we were partners forever and had no need for separate accounts. I remember agreeing because I wanted to believe in that kind of marriage. I thought he was right, that having everything combined meant we were stronger. Now those words felt like a trap. A cold fear ran through me, and I logged into the account to check the balance. At first, the number was still there, 85,000, sitting untouched. Relief washed over me, but it didn't last. When I clicked deeper into the transactions, my stomach dropped. There were pending withdrawals scheduled for the end of the week. Large sums planned in Ryan's name. He was preparing to drain the account. The reality hit me hard. He wasn't just betraying me with my sister. He was planning to take the future I had worked for, the money that represented my grandmother's love and sacrifice, and use it to start a new life with Jessica. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. Betrayal was one thing, but stealing what was mine crossed a line I could never forgive. My hands shook as I scrolled through the details. There was no mistake. He wanted to use my trust, my resources, and my family's gift to fund their escape. The thought made me sick, but alongside the sickness came something else, clarity. I realized I had a choice. I could sit back and let them strip me of everything, or I could fight back. The rage that had been simmering inside me hardened into resolve. I wasn't going to let them win. They had already broken my heart, but I still had control over my future. At that moment, I stopped feeling like a victim. Instead, I began to think about how to protect myself. I thought about the money, how much of it was tied to my grandmother's memory, how much I had sacrificed to build it. It wasn't just numbers in a bank. It was security. It was independence. It was mine. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. If Ryan believed he could walk away with both my sister and my savings, he was in for a rude awakening. I wasn't going to cry and let him strip me of everything. I was going to take action. I didn't waste time after seeing those pending withdrawals. The very next morning, I drove to the bank before Ryan even left for work. My hands were steady, my voice calm, but inside I was burning. I explained to the banker that I wanted to move all funds from the joint account into a new account under my name only. It took some paperwork, a few signatures, and several tense minutes, but by the end of it, every last cent of that $85,000 was safe with me. I left behind just $50 in the joint account. Just enough so it wouldn't look completely empty right away, but not enough to cover any of Ryan's grand plans. Walking out of that bank, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt in control. Once the money was secured, I started thinking about what came next. I couldn't stay in that house much longer. Every corner of it reminded me of lies. I began packing quietly, only the essentials at first: important documents, family photos, clothing I could tuck away without drawing suspicion. I kept the suitcases hidden in the trunk of my car, just in case Ryan started snooping. At night, when he thought I was asleep, I made lists. I wrote down everything I needed to take care of: finding a new place to live, updating my personal information, cutting off access he might still have to my accounts. During the day, I looked at apartments online. I toured a few under the excuse of running errands. Each step made me feel stronger, like I was building a wall between myself and their betrayal. The hardest part was pretending. I sat at the dinner table across from Ryan and even Jessica sometimes, keeping my face steady while rage churned inside me. They thought they were clever, sneaking glances, whispering behind my back. Let them think that. I smiled, nodded, and played the part of the clueless wife. Every fake smile felt like a weapon I was sharpening. I decided I wouldn't confront them again, not yet. The power was in letting them believe they had me fooled. If they thought they had already won, they wouldn't see the storm coming. I wanted them to feel secure, comfortable, confident in their lies, right up until the ground gave way beneath them. That became my focus: patience. I would let them build their little fantasy world, all while knowing the money they counted on was gone, their safety net cut, their plans doomed before they even began. For the first time in a long time, I felt steady. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was planning, moving, preparing. They had taken my trust, but I still had my strength, my will, and my future. And I was going to make sure they felt every ounce of the destruction they had tried to place on me. It didn't take long for their downfall to begin. Ryan had been talking for months about how tired he was of his job, how he wanted a change, how he was meant for more. With Jessica at his side, feeding his ego, he finally did it. He quit. He walked out of his office one Friday and came home proud of himself, convinced he had money to fall back on. Jessica encouraged him, telling him he deserved freedom, that life was too short to waste in an office. I kept my face calm, nodding when he told me the news, even though inside I wanted to laugh. He really believed that savings would hold him up. He had no idea it was gone. At first, they acted like everything was perfect. Jessica started showing up with new clothes and little things she clearly couldn't afford. Ryan talked about trips they might take and investments he wanted to try. They acted like they were on top of the world, blind to the fact that the ground beneath them was already crumbling. Then came the day they tried to access the account. I wasn't there, but I can imagine the scene clearly. Ryan walking into the bank, expecting to pull out thousands, only to be told the balance was next to nothing. Just $50 sitting there, taunting him. When he came home that night, his face was pale, his jaw tight. He avoided me, barely said a word, but I could hear him and Jessica arguing in the next room. She accused him of being careless, of wasting their chance. He snapped back that she had pushed him into quitting his job, that she made him believe they were untouchable. The fight went on for hours, voices rising and falling, the sound of things being slammed against the wall. From that moment, the cracks between them grew wider. Bills started piling up on the kitchen counter. I noticed envelopes marked urgent and final notice. Jessica hated the stress. She had never been good with responsibility. It wasn't long before she began to pull back. She came around less, made excuses, claimed she needed space. Eviction notices followed. The house that had once been filled with their smug laughter now echoed with silence and tension. Ryan was desperate, trying to pick up odd jobs, but nothing steady came his way. Jessica wanted no part of his struggle. She began staying away for days at a time until eventually, she stopped coming at all. I watched it all unfold quietly. I never had to lift a finger beyond moving that money. Their own choices, their own greed, and their own betrayal were enough to destroy them. Seeing Ryan frantic and Jessica slipping away brought me a strange calm. For once, I wasn't the one carrying the weight. They were. I didn't gloat, I didn't scream. I simply watched from a distance, satisfied that justice had taken its natural course. It didn't take Jessica long to give up completely. Once she realized Ryan had no steady income and no savings to lean on, she started pulling away fast. At first, she came around less often, always with some excuse about being busy or needing time to think. Then one night, she just didn't show up at all. Days went by, and she still didn't come back. Ryan tried calling her, but she ignored him. When she finally answered, it was only to tell him she was done. She wasn't going to stick around with a man who had nothing left to give. Her words gutted him. I could see it in his face, the shock that she would leave so quickly after everything he had risked for her. But I wasn't surprised. Jessica had always been selfish. She had no loyalty to anyone but herself. Ryan had gambled everything on her, and she walked away without a second thought. It wasn't long after Jessica left that Ryan turned back to me. One evening, he showed up at the house looking tired and defeated. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes hollow. He begged me to listen. He said he had made a mistake, that he had been manipulated, that Jessica was the one who pulled him into everything. He tried to paint himself as the victim, desperate for me to believe he had been trapped. I stood there and let him speak, but inside, my heart was steel. When he finally stopped, I told him I had seen it all with my own eyes, that night in my own bedroom. There was no lie he could tell me that would erase the image of him with my sister. His face crumbled when he realized I had known the truth all along. He begged anyway, falling to his knees, saying he still loved me, that he wanted another chance. But I didn't bend. I told him I could never forget what he had done, that love doesn't survive that kind of betrayal. He had destroyed the marriage with his own choices, and there was no going back. Meanwhile, Jessica was facing her own consequences. Word spread through the family about what she had done. Our parents were devastated. My mother cried when she realized Jessica had betrayed me in such a cruel way. My father, usually calm, was furious. They both cut her off completely. She became estranged, no longer welcome at family gathering, no longer part of the life she had once leaned on so heavily. As for Ryan, once Jessica abandoned him, his world collapsed completely. He had no money, no home, and no job. He started sleeping on friends' couches, bouncing from one place to another. His reputation followed him, whispers of what he had done circling through our community. He was no longer the proud, confident man I once knew. He was broken, and all of it was of his own making. I didn't feel pity. I felt free. With Ryan gone and Jessica out of my life, I finally had space to breathe. The money I had saved became the foundation of my new beginning. I used it wisely, just the way my grandmother would have wanted. I bought a small home in a quiet neighborhood, nothing extravagant, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I walked through a front door that felt safe. Every wall, every room, belonged only to me. No lies, no betrayal, just peace. Moving into that house was more than a change of address. It was a step toward rebuilding who I was. For so long, I had been wrapped up in carrying other people, fixing problems that weren't mine, ignoring the whispers in my gut. Now, I was learning to listen to myself. The silence of my new space wasn't empty, it was healing. I decided I couldn't carry the weight of what had happened alone. I started therapy. At first, it was hard to open up. I had built my life on being the strong one, the responsible one, the person who kept it together. Sitting in front of a stranger and admitting how broken I felt was terrifying. But session after session, I found myself letting go of pain I had buried deep. I realized the betrayal wasn't my fault. Their choices weren't a reflection of my worth. That truth gave me strength I didn't know I had. As I healed, I began reaching out to people I had lost touch with. Old friends I had drifted away from during my marriage welcomed me back with open arms. We shared meals, laughter, and long talks. For years, I had put Ryan's needs first, isolating myself without even realizing it. Reconnecting with friends reminded me of who I was outside of being a wife or a sister. It felt like pieces of myself were returning, one by one. Another lesson came slowly but firmly, trusting my instinct. I thought back to the early days, when the little signs had been right in front of me. I had ignored them because I didn't want to believe people I loved could betray me. Now, I promised myself I would never push those feelings aside again. If something felt wrong, I would trust it. I would never let anyone make me doubt my own mind again. As months passed, I began to open my heart carefully to the idea of love again. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't desperate. I was cautious, and that caution felt healthy. I went on a few dates, met kind people, but I took my time. I wasn't looking for someone to save me. I had already saved myself. What I wanted was a partner who valued honesty, who respected the woman I had become. Each day in my new life reminded me that survival wasn't the end of the story. Healing and growing were just as important. And for the first time in a long time, I felt proud of where I stood. When I look back now, what stands out the most is not the act itself, but who it came from. The deepest betrayals rarely come from strangers. They come from the people you trust, the ones you believe would never hurt you. My husband and my own sister were the two people I thought I could rely on the most. Losing them in that way left scars I will carry forever. But in those scars, I also found strength I never knew I had. For a long time, I thought revenge had to mean tearing them down, screaming in their faces, or exposing them for what they were. But the truth was, I didn't have to destroy them. They were perfectly capable of destroying themselves. All I had to do was step back and let their choices catch up to them. And they did. They both lost everything, not because I made it happen, but because they chose lies and selfishness over love and loyalty. There is a certain peace that comes from realizing you don't need to fight fire with fire. The best revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's simply reclaiming your own power, walking away, and letting life take care of the rest. Watching them crumble under the weight of their own mistakes gave me more satisfaction than any outburst ever could. I learned that my worth was never tied to how others treated me. Ryan's betrayal didn't make me less of a wife, and Jessica's cruelty didn't make me less of a sister. Their actions spoke about who they were, not who I was. Once I accepted that, I began to feel free. If there is one lesson I hold on to, it's this. You cannot control the choices of others, but you can control what you do after they hurt you. You can either let the pain define you, or you can rise above it. I chose to rise. I chose to build a new life on my own terms, to honor the strength my grandmother believed in when she left me her inheritance. Today, I am stronger, independent, and at peace with myself. I no longer feel the need to explain or justify what happened. I no longer carry the weight of their betrayal on my shoulders. I've built a home, reconnected with the people who matter, and learned to trust myself again. To anyone listening who has been betrayed, I want you to know that healing is possible. Even after the deepest cut, even after the cruelest deception, you can stand again. You can find joy again. You can reclaim your life. The pain may shape you, but it doesn't have to define you. Sometimes the best revenge is not revenge at all. It's taking your power back, walking away, and letting karma do what it always does. And when you finally find peace, that's when you realize you've already won.